If you're not happy now, more won't help. And it's just like, no matter where you are, you have stuff to be grateful for. It doesn't matter how bleak or how much pain you're in or what, the external circumstances are. There's always things to be grateful for. And I think reminding yourself of that, even on the hardest days, is one of the most important things to being happy.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan.
This is a ridiculously inspiring story of overcoming hardships and challenges, as well as turning one's life around. It's really awesome when you hear a story like this one, where Brittany chooses to not only move forward, but also become the best version of herself. Brittany is self-reflective, funny, and inspiring. You'll leave this conversation feeling empowered and motivated, knowing that regardless of what's happened in the past, you too can achieve your dreams and goals. We do talk about addiction, suicidal thoughts, and mental health. The podcast, despite these topics, is quite light and filled with lots of humor. I walked out feeling energized, wiser, and overall more positive after this conversation. So let's introduce today's guest. Brittany Schmitt is a comedian, writer, and podcaster. She currently has a new comedy special, From Hoe to Housewife, where in her words, she quite literally went from hoe to housewife. She crafted a comedy special that tackles her experience of sex, drugs, and basketball, plus a lot more. It's very funny. And here's a little snippet from her life story which blew me away. Brittany fucked up and got a DUI. Super depressed, mortified, broke, and with her back up against the wall, a friend suggested that she try stand-up comedy because it was cheaper than therapy, and she could laugh at herself. The first time she stepped on stage, she knew that this is what she was born to do. The road hasn't been easy, nor has it been exactly linear. So she made up her mind to get sober, get her shit together, and get serious about comedy. Most recently, Brittany appeared on Comedy Central's Stand Up, featuring her debut comedy special, of course, titled From Hoe to Housewife, which premiered on 800 Pound Gorilla's YouTube channel. Links are in the episode notes below if you'd like to listen to it. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, such as meeting Usher, going to jail, drugs, alcohol, and getting sober, her new comedy special, her holistic forward-moving mindset, gratitude, intuition, and happiness. Before we get into this chat, in case you aren't aware, the videos are now available on YouTube under Michael Kahan. That's Kahan with a K, unless you're listening to it already. I find it adds a new element and dynamic to these chats. I'll still be posting snippets of these chats on Instagram under Funny in Failure, so check them out if you want to stay in the loop for upcoming episodes, or you want to ask a guest a question. I'd also love it if you would share the podcast or share your takeaways from the chat. It really motivates me, helps the podcast grow, and ensures I can lock in amazing guests like this one. And just as a final reminder, the podcast comes out every Monday at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, with the video to follow the following day. Anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's epic episode.
Well, actually,
maybe the way you think about it is what's wrong. You're like, because if you say that, then you're just kind of like, perpetuating everything to break in your life.
Yep. Okay, I can see that you already know about how the universe works.
Right.
What else? Yep. Okay.
You speak it into existence.
Yep.
The mic falls down. Your relationship falls apart. Your car breaks. It's all.
Oh God.
Oh God.
Okay. Where do we start? Okay, this could be a funny place to start.
Okay.
Is this true that Usher took you to jail?
No. So it is true that I met him. It is true that I called him out. I didn't think it was him because he was so unbelievably short. I was in heels and he was literally like up to my chin. Yep. But no, the part of him taking me to jail was added because just for the sake of the joke.
Oh, that would have been very cute.
I know. I wish, although I did give him my phone number and he never called. And then I was like, is it because I went to jail? It was funny in my head. I had like so many different factors of like why he maybe didn't call, but I did tell him legitimately I was going to jail. And then it was the 4th of July I met him on was the 4th of July where like the next day or maybe that same day, his kids got in like some tragic accident. Maybe they died. They might've died. Something horrible happened to him the next day. And I was like, oh, that's why he didn't call me. But like, also, no, it's like he didn't call me because A, he wasn't interested, and B, I was going to jail.
Or C, how do we know it actually was Usher? Was it 100%
Right.
Usher?
It was
Or we're
100%
not sure?
Usher. It was 100% Usher.
Oh, okay. That would have been a really nice story.
Yeah.
Maybe we should backtrack because you've had a wild life, and
Yeah.
I'm so excited to talk about all of these things and like your new belief systems and how you see the world, and you're a very positive person now. Should we backtrack of how you got to jail, and then we'll build up to?
Sure, we can do that. Yeah. So, I mean, I was born and raised in Wisconsin, and I joke about it in my special, but a DUI is like a rite of passage there. It's really not a big deal. You know, it's just like, oh, whatever. And then I moved to LA, and I was too broke to go home to Wisconsin to visit my family for Christmas. So I flew to Phoenix to see my friend. And while I was in Phoenix, I got drunk and she was going to drive, and then her coworker was like, you can't drive, like DUIs are very serious here. And I'm like, no, they're not. And I like took the keys, and also I didn't think I was going to get a DUI. You know, they say usually you have to drive drunk like 500 times before they catch you once.
Whoa.
So they caught me there. The cop actually just saw the whole thing go down, where like I grabbed her keys and then I dropped them and then I picked them up and I was like, let's go. And then I got pulled over immediately. And the whole time I wasn't taking it seriously because, like I said, in Wisconsin, you get several DUIs and it truly does not matter. And they drew my blood. It was like a sting. Yeah, it was a sting operation. So they were just out to get drunk drivers. They literally put me in the back of a cop car with another girl who just got a DUI. Like they were cranking out numbers that night. They drew my blood. It was a 0.18, which is pretty high. She was partying. And the next day I went to, because the reason I went to go see my friend was her little brother was playing in one of the bowl games, like a football game. And they're like, oh, we heard you got a DUI. Like, that's going to be really bad. And I was like, no, it's not. And they're like, no, it's going to be really bad. Like, we have a zero tolerance policy here. So in Arizona, state by state, all of the laws are different. Arizona has the most strict of all of the states. It's zero tolerance. So even if you had like a sip of beer and you drove, the minimum sentence is 10 days. Yeah.
Nothing.
So it's nothing, not a drop, nothing. And I had like many, many drops, many shots. It was just like, yeah, it was stupid. But I think I got actually really lucky, because if they would have waited like a little bit longer to take my blood, I think I would have been in a lot more trouble, because I took like 4 shots before I left the bar. And so I don't even think it hit my system yet. And then I would have been, so the minimum sentence at the time, this was 2012, the time was 10 days was a minimum sentence. The place that I was in was 30 days. And then anything above that could have been up to like 6 months. So I think if they would have waited a couple more minutes, I would have been in a lot of trouble, and probably not having this conversation with you today, because my life would be much different.
Ooh, how so? Or
if I had to go games? If I had to go to jail for over a month, because I did have to go to jail for a month, I would have lost my job. I would have not been able to afford that. I would have had to move back to Wisconsin. I think, my life would look a lot different in a bad way.
In a bad way. Well, I'm glad that you can still, we'll get into it, but it sounds like this was almost a blessing in disguise for you. So when you were doing jail for 30 days, you had a bit of a different experience. I think you were still going to and from work. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So I wonder what the statute of limitations is on this, or if I can get in trouble for saying this, but I didn't stop drinking and driving when I went to jail. I was drinking and driving myself to jail. And I just remember thinking I was so much smarter than the system, because I was in for a DUI. I didn't have a driver's license, and I was making them validate my parking. And I was like, these fucking idiots. I'm like parking in their structure and they're validating my parking. I'm like, I don't have a driver's license. I shouldn't be driving. And you guys are, they're just,
they just not care, or not like put 2 and 2 together?
I think they were incredibly dumb. And I think that's why we have so many issues with police in this country, is because they're just not
They're like,
The
you
bar's
better not
pretty
be
low.
yeah, you better not
Yeah.
be drinking, but
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So you didn't get the full jail experience, or what do you do on the weekends? What do you do when you have to check in?
So the first 48, I was locked down. I couldn't go to work. The Beverly Hills Pay to Stay is where I stayed. It's in the middle of Beverly Hills. It's literally 2 blocks away from Rodeo Drive, which is the most expensive block in probably the country.
It sounds like a nice
And
hotel.
yeah, it was ridiculous. It was just like my room was huge. It was like a studio. At the time I was living in a studio at the beach. I think it was like similar in size. It had a futon and a TV, like a tube TV, and a table that randomly had 6 chairs, concrete, like they were cemented into the ground. So I could have a dinner party if I was allowed guests, which I wasn't. And then I remember that the only thing that bummed me out was the toilet was metal, and then you couldn't have a mirror because you couldn't have glass because they thought you would hurt yourself, and I had to put contacts in my eyes every day. And I just remember thinking like, I can't fucking do this. But yeah, it was like I brought my own food, I brought my own blankets, and then that was it. I was in there for 48 hours. I read books, I watched TV, and then I started going to work 6 days a week for the rest of my sentence.
Did you do 6 days so you wouldn't have to go to jail for those? Or you were working 6 days anyway?
No, I just got out of jail and hung out on Saturdays.
Yeah, very unique experience.
Yeah.
I can't believe you could bring your own food. Do they even offer you food there? This just
No.
sounds like a holiday where...
Yeah. It was like a really shitty holiday. It was a really depressing one. It was still fucking, it's still jail. So it's still like, this is a bummer. I remember, and I didn't work out at the time because I was just too much of a drunk. And I remember the first time I was going to go, like, I knelt down to do push-ups. I did like 1 push-up and they knocked on my door and they're like, you have a guest. And I was like, what? And one of my friends came to see me. And that was it. I never worked out. I ended up stealing food at the end because I couldn't afford food. And like, I noticed that like food had been there for a while. So I was like, I think people who were in this jail before forgot this food. So I'm going to start eating it.
Wait, can you access like a fridge or this?
Yeah.
Mini bar?
Yeah. No mini bar, just a fridge and a freezer. And then there was like some Amy's frozen dinners in there. And I was like, I'm going to start eating these and see if I get in trouble.
And they just let you like use heaters or microwaves or whatever?
Yep.
Okay, so this is a hotel, so an
yeah.
Airbnb
yeah.
at least.
So it was Holiday Inn Express.
And then what was it like? Because you're working in advertising. I think you're climbing the corporate ladder. You're doing quite well at the time.
Mm-hmm.
How are you? Because by your words, you seem to be like a high functioning drunk and you're still going in jail, which can mentally impact you. How do you like function in 2 different worlds?
Well, it was interesting because the owners of the agency that I worked at all knew that I was in jail, but they were like, hey, let's not tell anyone else, But then it kind of became like this thing that like a few people knew and then word spread. And then someone came up to me and they're like, is this true that you're going to jail at night? And I was like, oh, yeah. I wouldn't say I was actively climbing the ladder at that time. I would say I was holding on to the ladder. Like I was just, there was not much upward trajectory in that 30 days. It was just really, I had to get through that time and then, figure my life out after that.
That's nice that the advertising agency like kept you on. Were they worried or they understood that you wanted to be there?
They kind of were like my family, we bonded really quickly. And I was really good friends with one of the like key investors of the company, which I think helped. And, they were just like, you'll get through it. It's fine. Because in my mind, I was like, you guys because they had to sign off on me going to jail. It's like your parents have to sign off when you're getting bad grades. Like your employer has to sign off on you going to jail. And they're like, all right, we'll get through this. So no, I'm very fortunate that they were so understanding and open to me having that experience and not firing me for it.
And then on Saturdays, how did you get by the system?
I mean, there was no system. It was literally you just checked out and they just trusted that you were going to work. And then I would just go to the beach and like hang out and get drunk. I remember like my last day and this is so horrible and it's so dark, but my last day, my friend was in town from London and we got hammered and went and got tattoos and I was supposed to be back at 8 p.m. and I got so drunk that I got lost. This is like 2012. So like, I don't have an iPhone. I couldn't remember how to get to jail. And I'm like driving around and drunk and like, I had no idea where I was. So I was like 23 minutes late and I was like, this is it. They're going to catch me. I'm going to get another DUI. This is going to be the end. Like, this is the end of my life. And then the next day I'm just sitting there like sweating my hangover out. And the officer comes up to my door and I'm like, and he's like, all right, so because you were late yesterday, we have to let you out. Like for you, you'll be released, but you're going to be released 23 minutes later. I was like, okay, great. Thank you.
Wow. Imagine that being the punishment. It sounds like when I was at uni, if I like handed in something late, they're like, it's a % a day. And I thought I was going to get into a lot of trouble. Like, guess I'll cop it.
Right.
Just I guess.
Yeah, it's just like none of it really. I'm like, I do wonder if they knew what was going on and they didn't care, or if I was really as slick as I thought I was. Because I was like, I got a tattoo. I came in with cellophane on my ankle. And they do a body search. Like they check you before you go in and they're like, what's this? And I was like, I don't know. Something. And it was a brand new tattoo.
Oh, that was there the whole time. Like, I guess it was. Did you meet any interesting people? Or was it more you're in and you're out? Did you like experiences?
No, I was the only person in the jail the whole time. I think there was one arrest that happened. This was like, I don't know. You're in Australia, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you remember I don't know if this was a thing for you guys, but in like the 10s in like 2012, there was like a big bath salt craze where people were getting really high on bath salts.
Yeah.
Remember that? That was this time. And I remember a guy was high on bath salts and he was, I think, like self-mutilating at an intersection and like pulling his skin off. And he came in, but they had him in like a straitjacket and he was in the cell next to me. And I was like but I couldn't see anything. And I got no information. But the cool thing was, because I had that TV, if I watched Comedy Central, which was one of the channels that I always watched, I'd just like watch Tosh.0. The police scanner would sync up to that channel. So anytime anything was going on and I was watching Tosh, I could hear just like what was going on in Beverly Hills on all the police scanners. And I was like,
how does it connect to? That's weird.
It must have been something. Yeah. Some sort of wires got crossed with the radio transmission. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. All I know is that I heard shit and it was pretty boring. Like Beverly Hills is a pretty safe place to live.
Fair enough. And then when you came out of jail, how long before you decided to change things up?
A long time.
Go on.
Yeah, it wasn't quick. It was well, I did that sentence in 2012 and I got sober in 17 technically. I quit drinking at the very end of 2017, but I got fully sober in 2018. So it was like 5 years. Yeah, I was still partying.
And what was the moment that made you decide to become sober?
Truthfully, my mom killed herself and my whole life, so she was borderline personality disorder. We had a very complicated relationship. And from a very young age, she always told me, she's like, you're going to be an alcoholic, just like your father. So I drank at her. I was like, I'll show you an alcoholic, you bitch. And then there was like a moment in my life where I was like, I hope I don't have to keep this up forever because I am exhausted and it is kicking my ass. But I was like proving to her, I think in my head, I was like showing her, I was like, I can have everything that you didn't have. Like I can have, a husband, a job and a good life and all these things and still drink. Cause like that was the thing. She's like, you're never going to be able to, you're never going to be shit if you drink. And then when she died, it was like the monkey was just off my back. I was like, oh, thank God. It was like the first thing I felt when I got that call was relief, and an overwhelming amount of relief for both of us. One, because she was never going to get better. She was never going to find peace on earth, and she was never going to be nice to people. And she was just not having a good time here. Mm-hmm. And two, because I'm like, I don't have to like do this elaborate performance art piece of killing myself slowly just to prove her wrong. So that is when I finally was like, yeah, I should probably get sober. And I remember my therapist and I had been talking about it for a while. She's like, do you think you're in control of this? And we kind of like, we were doing this test where she was like, okay, wake up any morning, doesn't matter the morning, and just decide I'm either going to drink today or I'm not going to drink today. And she's like, and then stick to that. She's like, it's just very simple. And then I remember like a Wednesday. I'm like, I'm not going to drink today. And then it was lunchtime and I was on my second beer before I realized I was on my second beer. And I had like told myself earlier, I was like, oh, maybe I'm not driving this car. Which was like kind of a scary thing, but not scary enough for me to make a change. And then when my mom died, I went back to her funeral, and it was like, it's this thing with alcoholics and addiction where you kind of like make rules for yourself and you're like, I'm not going to break this rule. And then you just like constantly break all these fucking rules.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm not going to get drunk at her funeral. Like that would be smart. And so I didn't get drunk at her funeral. I got fucking blackout. And I was like, the next morning I woke up and I was with my cousin and a few girlfriends that were there with me. And I was like, oh, last night went like pretty good. Right. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, what happened? And they're like, well, we went back to Ward's, which was like this bar I worked at in college. And she's like, and then you basically like scream cried on the bar for like an hour. And I was like, what? And I just kind of had this moment where I was like, I'm so sick of being told what I've done with my life. Like, I don't want this. I don't want other people to be telling my story. I want to be in control of the narrative. I'm done. So that was it. That was the last day I drank, was December 11th, 2017.
Oh, from that moment. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It was the day after her funeral. I had like it's so fucking embarrassing too. I think I had like a mimosa was my last drink. It was like I was like hungover, like drinking a mimosa, and I'm like, this is the end. This is the last thing.
Can't recover from this.
Yeah.
So the reason that I bring all of this up is because I love AA people. I think they're the greatest people on the planet. Many of the guests have come from the AA program, and the insights, the positivity, the awareness. Oh, it's just beautiful. Even though I've never done it, but hearing it, I feel like everyone needs their own AA program, because we've all got addictions. We've all got stuff that we need to work on.
Yeah.
How quickly did you join the AA program?
That took me a while, because I was still smoking pot, and like I was pretty like the insanity really became apparent when I quit drinking, and like my inability to be with myself was wild. Like I started doing things that I wasn't even doing when I was drinking. Like I started smoking cigarettes a bunch, like just dry smoking cigarettes. I went to New York to do comedy shows, and I did coke. And I was telling myself I was sober. I was like, I'm sober. And then I remember I ran into a friend in AA, and I was still smoking weed and like popping Molly every once in a while. And I ran into a friend in AA, and she was like, are you still smoking weed? Because I was like, I'm sober. I've been sober for like 6 months. She's like, are you still smoking weed? And I was like, yeah. She's like, you're not sober. And I was like, fuck you. And then I was like, I can quit smoking weed. That's not the problem. And then I quit smoking weed, and that was the worst week of my life. Like when I finally had to sit with myself, they say in AA, like when you're drinking and using, it's like driving a station wagon and throwing all your problems in the back. And then when you stop everything, it's like slamming on the brakes and like everything comes to the front. Like that's what it was for me. It was just like everything I hadn't felt my entire life, I felt in 1 week. And I was sad and suicidal and depressed and just like horrible. And I called my friend who told me to stop smoking. And I was like, I need help. And she's like, come to AA. Let's go. And she was my first sponsor. So.
Oh, wow. Well, that's crazy and super, super amazing on you, because feeling that much that quickly, you could just quickly revert back.
Yeah. I mean, all I wanted to do was get high. But then I was like, if there is this much sadness and this much stuff that I just haven't been feeling for my whole life, I'm like, yeah, I have some work to do.
Still very mature. There's not to, I don't necessarily like playing the game if I was in your shoes, but when you're feeling that much, to not just, because we do it in all aspects of life, sweep our emotions under the rug. I know that you had that good mindset, but still that is coming right at you.
Yeah.
It would have felt like all over the place. The image I'm getting is like you can't even like stand because everything's shaking beneath you.
Yeah. It was the most painful. And that's why I know, I have slipped up and I've like used weed again. I did that last year for like 5 months. And I was like, why haven't I gotten anything done in 5 months? But I know that I'll never drink again. Well, I hope that I'll never drink again or like use hard drugs again. Cause I'm like, I can't do that. I can't do like early sobriety again. It's too painful.
I noticed, and I wouldn't say that I had a problem, but long story short, when I was young, I was going out and I was drinking a lot. I was only going out maybe once or twice a week. I hit this realization that I had to drink if I was going out. Like, that's not healthy. That's not working for me. And I did also black out at times. And I decided, I'm not actually getting anything out of this. So I just cut it. And all of my relationships changed because it's, there's kind of a societal, I'm not quite sure what it is, like expectation. If you're going out on a Saturday night when you're young, you have to drink. Or if you're going to meet someone, you go to the bar and have a drink. And I noticed that when I did it, a lot of my relationships changed, some for better, some for worse. I'm grateful that happened. Did you have any of that?
100%. Yeah. I think when you get sober, it holds up a mirror to anyone around you that isn't sober and who might question their relationship with drugs or alcohol. And I was that person when I was using. Like, I remember I would throw parties or barbecues or whatever, and if someone wasn't drinking, I was like, get out of my house. I don't want, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want you here if you're not drinking. Like, if you're not going to be going hand in hand with me into fucking hell tonight, like, I don't want you around, because it is too much of a mirror for somebody to, and for me, it's like, I can be around people who are partying now if I have to, but I don't really have any business there. I'm not really getting anything out of it. When one person is drunk and one person is sober, it's not really like an even exchange. So there's no point. And like, also it gives me PTSD now where like, if I'm around a drunk person, I'm just like, oh my God, this was me for so long. And I thought I was so funny and so interesting and so electric and lighting the room up with my energy. And I was just giving other people anxiety.
Interesting. So at that stage, because I was still going out a lot and I wasn't drinking, and you just see like 20 sloppy guys and you're like, oh my God, what's happening here? And then you like slowly don't go out and they're like, you've changed, man. Like, why would you go to like, but you talk about that even exchange, like a drunk to sober person is so gross if they're sloppy drunk. And it's just like, yuck. It's like
there's a saying in AA, you don't go to the whorehouse for the organ player. You know what I mean? Like you don't go to the bar for the interaction, or you go there to get fucked up. So it's like, eventually we're going to stop going to the bar. It's like, there's nothing there for us anymore. I'd rather sit home and meditate and read a book than, be around people just losing themselves one drink at a time.
So when you go through radical transformation, which you have, and you've gone through the AA program, we'll get into what it's taught you. You're questioning yourself, your belief systems, your relationships. Obviously your mum would have come up and just, why is all of this sadness? And so through my experiences, speaking to people and even me to a degree, that when you're going through like a radical transformation, you're quickly like evolving. And so sometimes, I'm not saying that we're better or anyone's better than anyone else, but because you're going in a completely different direction, you can kind of like go past your friends. They're going one way, you're going another way. And that can also really impact relationships, just the day-to-day interactions. How did you kind of navigate that?
Well, I mean, you realize really quickly who are your friends because you have stuff in common and there's a relationship with substance, and who are your friends because you partied together. And those people that you party with, you just lose really quickly. And it doesn't even hurt. Like, losing those people isn't painful. It's not like, oh, why don't they want to hang out with me anymore? It's just like, no, we have nothing in common. Like, what we had in common was we used to get fucked up, and now we don't do that anymore. And another thing that I realized when I got sober was like, I used to think I was an extrovert. Like, I used to think I liked being around people, and like my soul like thrived and fed off of all of that. But what I learned was that I'm very much an introvert. I just didn't like drinking alone. So I would cling on to anyone to hang out with. And I thought I had all of these friends, but really I just had people that made me feel less alone when I was getting drunk. So my friend circle got so small, but I'm very grateful for that, because it is like a cleansing process where it's like, if we don't have anything in common other than getting drunk, then we have nothing in common.
That's a really interesting take. And then just what about your non-partying friends? Because they, and you've spoken about the mirror, but sometimes like, because you're doing so much so quickly, the other person might be like, well, who is this person? They're changing in massive ways. Did you have to navigate those type of relationships?
Absolutely. I think the one that was the most in my face was my husband, because he didn't want me to stop drinking. We were drinking buddies. He didn't really want to look at he just thought, he kind of took my getting sober as like a personal attack, which
Ah,
it
the
very
mirror.
much was not. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
It was just like, I'm just trying to do better for myself. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely people who feel like you're leaving them behind, or you're growing in a way that doesn't fit. But like, if their whole identity is drinking and partying, then like I said, like that's it for us, you know. But even like, I mean, another big one that was really crazy was my ex stepmom. So my dad was married to this woman for many years. She was a fucking absolute nightmare, just like alcoholic bridge troll.
Oh, wow.
And when I
Bridge
got
troll.
sober, when I got sober,
Sorry.
she hated that. Like she it would get wasted and just be like, born again Brittany, you think you're better than everyone because you're fucking blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, put a shirt on, you know, like, why are you why are you naked right now yelling at me? Like, it's just like,
Oh, wow.
like, yeah. So definitely, I mean, people that are in like deep alcoholism have a real issue with sobriety. And I know that because when I was in deep alcoholism, I had a real issue with sobriety. Like, I remember one time we had a friend come over with his wife, and you know, we were just having like a casual barbecue. I'm like, why aren't you fucking drinking? Why aren't you drinking? Blah, 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 blah. Like getting in her fucking face about it. And she's like, I just been taking like a little break. Da, da, da. You know, 9 months later, she has a baby. And I'm like, she was pregnant. And I was just like, I was giving her the fucking 10th degree. I'm just like, you need to drink. And she was pregnant. I was just like being a bully.
And you navigate this how you want, because I don't like getting into the partner stuff unless if you want to. Normally, relationships don't survive when one person is going through radical transformation. I know you have a great relationship with your husband, so I don't mind bringing it up. And I think maybe you do a podcast together, but that can be really hard when, you know, you're showing a mirror to one person, the other person's got their own relationship. You're trying to like rediscover who you are. You're probably battling heaps. You're just trying to like, you know, like live your best life. How did you kind of like push through that and become solid?
It was definitely hard at first, and I give him a lot of credit because I was really hard to deal with. Like I had dealt with depression and suicidal ideation and all of this stuff in early sobriety that I had never really dealt with before. So he was dealing with a whole new partner. Like I was fighting demons, and he just honestly was great. Once he kind of got on board with it, he held space for me. He gave me space to grow. He gave me space to feel the feels. He just like kind of provided like unconditional love and support that I needed during that time. Cool. And then after he sort of saw how quickly my life changed for the better,
Nice.
He got sober. So
I didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah, he got sober maybe a year after I got sober, maybe less, maybe it was 9 months, but it was such a juxtaposition of like, I got very clear after I got like through the depression and all, you know, wanting to kill myself and all that fun stuff. I got very clear on like my life and what I wanted to do. And I just started like pushing forward, and the universe started supporting me in ways it never really had before. And I was on a warpath. And then he was sort of like unhappy at work, but didn't want to leave the job because didn't want to, you know, he didn't want to have no income. And like, but I was just like, you know, it was very clear he needed to like quit his job. He was partying a lot. He was like just doing all this stuff where I was just like, I don't want to be with somebody who's like coming home wasted. And like, I don't want to have to navigate that. And I just, you know, he ended up getting let go from that job that he hated. And I was just like, hey, maybe this is a good time for you to do sober October. Like just take 1 month off and just get clear on what you want next. Because like, you know, if you stay in a job you hate, then the universe isn't going to give you any new opportunities. But like you have this nice opportunity to just like get clear with yourself. So he did sober October. He lost 15 pounds in 1 month, which I hate men. When they get sober, they lose all this weight and they look amazing. I mean, most people lose weight, but like he lost so much weight. And then he was just like, oh, I feel good. He was like energized. He was riding his bike again. He was just like doing things that he hadn't done in so long. And then, you know, when I was in advertising, I used to do recruitment. So I was like, he got let go in October. And I was like, don't expect to get a job for the end of the year. Q4, nobody's getting hired in Q4. The budget's on hold. Everyone's blowing through the budgets. expect that you'll get hired in January somewhere, but take these next couple of months to just focus on yourself. So he kind of like released the pressure of like, I need to make money, I need to do this. And he stayed sober, and everything just started happening for him. He got this huge job in January. He made more money than he's ever made, and he has been sober since.
Wow, what a nice lesson that when you
Yeah.
let go and you just
When you just release it, it's like this death grip on like, this needs to happen this way. I need to be making this much money. I need to be doing this. It's like, no, the universe has a bigger plan for you. Just release, just like let go.
And also through like, I like the word radical transformation because that's what it feels like it is. Correct me if that doesn't align with you.
Mhm.
But you are forced to really challenge your belief systems. Were there any that you were surprised that came out, or anything you felt like you needed to work on?
Yeah, I didn't believe in God. I went to, and my reasoning was so solid.
This will be good.
I went to, yeah, went to Catholic school growing up, and it was the worst experience of my life. The meanest fucking kids, the worst teachers, the worst. I'm like, yeah, because my parents were getting divorced, and that's, God says you shouldn't do that in the Catholic faith. That's a no-no. So that gave the kids all a really good reason to bully me. I got bullied in
My kids would care.
such an unbelievable way. Like, there was the ringleader was this girl who was horrible, and she got all the kids to pick me up at recess over their head and slam me on the ground and
What?
spit on me and kick me, and the teachers did nothing. Like, the chaperones like it was insane. So I was like, okay, God's not real. And I never ever believed in him again. I was like, that's it. And then when I got into AA, it sort of makes you have a higher power. And I was having a really hard time with that. Obviously, like, the Catholic faith and that experience was something that I had to do a fourth step on. But while I was doing my fourth step, I remember just powering through 1, 2, and 3.
Which is the fourth step? I don't know them.
Fourth step is when you're writing down all your resentments. So, one is admitting you're powerless. 2 is figuring out, what's your God and your higher power. And it can be anything. It can be an orchid. It can be a dog. It can be whatever. It doesn't have to be some guy in the sky. 3 is turning it over to that God. And then 4 is getting into the resentments. And I just powered through 1, 2, 3 because I was like, I don't believe in God. This isn't real. Let me just get to 4 because I need to, at least 4 is a homework assignment where you can like write shit out. And you're like, in this bitch. And while I was doing my 4th step, my dog started going crazy at the gardener outside. And I was like, oh, my poor little dog's just like, he's scared and he's anxious and he's all of these things, but he doesn't know that he's safe and he's fine. And he just doesn't have the wherewithal. And I was like, oh, that's how my higher power looks at me. Like,
Interesting.
Just like zoom it out 1 degree. I'm like, there's no way I'm the top of the intelligence, there's no, because I'm not that smart. So there's no
Agree
way.
to disagree.
Yeah, there's no way that I'm the top of the intelligence. So I'm just like, oh, that's how my higher power looks at me when I'm like in traffic in a car being like, you motherfucker. It's like, you're safe, you're fine, everything's good. You can do that if you want. It's only at the detriment to yourself, but go for it.
Wow, was it just like that? It's a nice little like sign from the universe or whatever, however people perceive it, but it's a nice analogy.
Yeah, it just came to me just like that. And I was like, oh, that I can wrap my head around. It's not like this evil, judgmental, you're going to get picked up on a playground and like thrown over, it's not that.
Spat on. Wow.
Yeah, it's just a higher intelligence that's protecting you.
Very interesting.
Yeah, that's that. Now I believe in God is all I'm saying.
That's very cool. And also, from what I hear from speaking to a lot of people that have gone through these programs, they're more like in tune with the universe. They notice more signs. They notice, like we're speaking off air about flow. Has that been, and you're kind of like smiling as well, has that been really exciting to go through that as well?
Yeah, it's great. It's great to listen to your intuition. Like the little voice inside of you is always right. I don't know why I was ignoring it for so long. And then it's also really great to just notice when you're being supported by the universe. You know what I mean? Like when I decided to quit advertising and start doing comedy, it was like such a trust fall. I went from making a lot of money and being very successful to walking into no guarantees, no money, no nothing. And then stuff just started happening. And I was like, oh, okay. So the universe supports this.
It's interesting with like different perspectives on like the universe, because there's like no like good or bad. It's just how like we perceive it. So when you remove stress, in through my experience, amazing things happen. When we remove the baggage, it kind of allows in more love, or however you want to perceive it. So it sounds like when you put aside the advertising, because I assume you weren't in alignment with it at that stage, or it wasn't bringing you what it once did.
Yeah, it made me realize that no matter how much money I made, I was going to hate it. Because I was making so much money, I didn't know what to do with it, and I hated it. And I hated every day, and I hated every interaction with my boss, and I just hated it. And I was like, oh, it doesn't matter if it's the amount of money I'm making now or $3 million. I'm going to be unhappy here. And in comedy, for me, of course, I want to make more money. Like, I'm ready, universe. I'm ready to make more money if you're listening. But I'm so much happier. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think that's really important. When I was starting out accounting, I could see like my 10, 15, 20-year plan and probably being what I thought I'd be a millionaire and everything would be okay. But it hit a point, and mentally I'm pretty strong, and everyone has ups and downs, but I meditate and I do a whole bunch of stuff. But I could not wake up to get to work. And this is a while ago, done a lot of work on it. And I was like, why can't I do this? Like, I'm happy outside, but when I go to work, my soul's like destroyed. I can't be, I'm not funny. I can't do comedy. And then I was like, I'm not going to work. And my whole life changed in a gazillion ways. And it was just so interesting that when you let go of like super stress, these things come in.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I think it's also interesting, something that I've noticed just being in this industry is I have a lot of friends that are very successful and they have all the things that they ever wanted. I also have some friends from college who made it into the NBA. They have more money than they could ever spend and they're miserable. So it is important to know that you can go after your dream and still be really sad. So you do have to do the work on yourself at all times, because getting the money isn't going to fix anything no matter how you get it.
Yeah, we've had so many examples of where an actor, for example, they're the lead of a show and they're probably getting paid God knows how much, but they don't have anyone to enjoy it with, or it's like an empty feeling because...
Yeah. Or it's like you get the things and then you realize that isn't going to fill the hole.
Yep,
you need to work on your spiritual problems, your spiritual ailments, because you can get everything and still be really fucking sad.
That's the goal of the game. And I heard you on another podcast. I don't know if it was you or the host, and you were talking about this billionaire, how much money would make them happy. And the person said $250 million. I was like, geez. So it sounds like you didn't have spirituality in your life, if that's how we're going to frame it. Has that been also a challenge to go into this world, or do you feel like it's a remembering? How have you kind of been able to navigate that?
The spiritual experience?
Yeah. Sounds like you've had a lot.
I think it's the only thing worth pursuing in this world is getting aligned and listen. I mean, once I dropped into it, I think now I know that is my purpose on this earth, is to continue to pursue the spiritual pursuit. It's just, there's nothing better. I love comedy and I love entertainment and I want to make movies, and don't get me wrong, I have a lot of dreams, but I don't none of that stuff is important to me if I'm not aligned.
And do you have a purpose or a mission or a why, if you don't mind sharing?
I just want, I think, there's that quote. Well, I'm going to butcher the quote. I don't know the quote exactly, but it's yesterday I was stupid and I wanted to change the world. Today I'm smart and I want to change myself.
Yeah.
It's one person at a time. I can control me. And so in order to do that, I meditate twice a day. I do TM, and I just have noticed TM changed my life. I just have noticed I'm not as reactive to things. If I can just change how I move through the world, that's good enough. If I can just be here and be kind and not ruin anyone else's day because I'm not taking care of myself, then that's the best I can do. I don't think
Amazing.
I can
No, that's
save the
amazing.
world.
And I like
Yeah.
the reactive side because everyone has got a gazillion triggers. Now, when something happens, are you able to like take that breath in and see it for what it is? Like, what's the relationship?
Yeah. I mean, I think like so when you go into TM to get trained, the way that the analogy that they use is your mind is like an ocean. The top is going to be rough sometimes, but underneath is always calm. So TM draws you down into that calm space where you can just be like, okay, this doesn't matter. This doesn't affect me. Let this person cut me off. They obviously have somewhere to be. Like, you know what I mean? So TM has just kind of brought me to a place of like, I'm pretty chill most of the time. I will say one way that I've noticed myself not being as affected by the world is like social media. So, you know, getting all these eyes on my stuff and having some of my stuff go viral, it doesn't come without a lot of people telling me that I'm trash and that I'm not a good comic and all of that stuff. And I can just look at it and be like, this is just a person in pain. This is just a person, you know, who's maybe a shadow artist who wishes they could create something. This is just a person who needs to go make their own fucking art, you know, like it doesn't, but like 4 years ago, if somebody would have told me I was trash, I would be like, okay, I'm going to kill myself. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, well, I guess then I don't deserve to live. So it's just changed in that, like, I don't take everything so personally. I try and just exist as a more steady person.
That's also really awesome because I've seen a lot of your content. It's hilarious. And it doesn't matter if you're the funniest person in the world and you're hilarious, you are going to get those comments. It is just this how the world works. I don't like it. Someone is going to say something.
Well, and I go there, you know, I do stuff like some of my comedy is very like Jesselnicky, like very dark. I'm talking about, you know, abortion and suicide and these things that people don't want to fucking talk about, or they have very strong opinions about. And it's funny because like I did this short with Don't Tell Comedy, which is a production company that puts on great shows in LA, shortly before I dropped my special. And they're like, we're thinking of these clips to promote it. And the first one was this abortion joke. And I was like, okay, but just know we're going to get lit the fuck up in the comments. Like people are fired up about this. They're like, no, I think it'll be great. No, we got fucking lit up. We got lit up. So it's just like, yeah, you have to be ready for it. If you're going to say crazy shit, people are going to, you know, give you their opinions and you have to just mute it. I honestly just have a social media manager who handles everything. And I'm just like, when I first put my special out, I was looking and it was just kind of like, oh, this isn't making me feel good. I don't need this. So no,
You've
I'm
done
just
the
like,
hard work. I'll get into it in a sec. Andrew Schultz, if that's how you pronounce it. I don't know if you know him.
mm-hmm.
I love him. I think he's hilarious. He had like a few inverted commas edgy jokes. One was about abortion. I actually think that his comedy is not attacking or that diverse. What's the word? Yeah, not that attacking. And I think he kind of like balances out. I thought it was hilarious. But he was told by networks that he wouldn't be allowed to keep certain jokes. So he just said, well, I'm going to do it myself.
Right.
And
Netflix. He had to buy a special back from Netflix.
Which would have been very stressful process.
And expensive.
Yep. So with you, and social media is the name of the game, you need to sell tickets when you're doing comedy. It's a huge part of your job. Does your social media manager do all of that? Are you still actively on it? How have you had to change the relationship besides not looking at the comments?
No, pretty much when I'm promoting stuff, I just send her everything. I'm like, put it up, just do this. I'll go on there a couple times, maybe twice a week, just to like check the DMs for bookings and stuff like that. Nice. She's pretty hands off with the DMs, but like with the posting and all of like regulating comments and all that stuff, she does that. I'm like, I always tell her not to delete anything unless it's truly, truly heinous. Because at the end of the day, what those trolls don't realize is they are just helping me get higher in the algorithm. Yes. Like if you comment, you're just helping me out, even though you hate my guts. So
that's great. Bring on the haters. No, not really.
Yeah.
Last thing on the AA program. Oh, there's so many things, but the one of the many things I like is gratitude. It forces, from what I've seen, individuals to be more grateful. Is that something that you've aware of, or is that a concept that you apply? Yeah.
So gratitude lists are a big part of my life. In the morning, I do morning pages, which is 3 pages of free form journaling. And then I always finish it off with a gratitude list, like 5 things I'm grateful for. It just forces you to be present and to be grateful One of my favorite quotes is, if you're not happy now, more won't help. And it's just like, no matter where you are, you have stuff to be grateful for. It doesn't matter how bleak or how much pain you're in or what, the external circumstances are. There's always things to be grateful for. And I think reminding yourself of that, even on the hardest days, is one of the most important things to being happy.
Agreed. So it sounds like you got quite a strong daily practice with the journaling, the meditation. Is there anything else that we may have missed as well?
Okay, so this one I just started like a couple weeks ago. My life coach introduced me to it. I dance in the mornings.
That's awesome.
So I do my morning pages, I meditate for 20 minutes, and then I dance for like 5 minutes. And it's great because it just moves your energy. Like if you're tired or lethargic, it forces you to like move energy, and it's just fun and it's silly. And I love it.
It makes you more playful, and fun and creative as well.
Yeah.
And you're right about getting that energy up and down. We've just got a rebounder, me and my girlfriend. So we do 3 minutes and we're absolutely dead afterwards. But you can feel, you don't feel lethargic. Or at least I don't.
No, it energizes you.
That is a very cool one. And do you ever not do these things? Do you ever miss days?
Yeah, of course. I'm human.
And what's the self-talk like when you miss a day?
Tomorrow. There's always tomorrow. I don't beat myself up about it. I'm in such a better place now than I was 5 years ago that I am just like, even me on my worst day today is way better than me on my best day 5 years ago. So
that's amazing. And looking back, I don't know how long it was, maybe 10 years ago, if you could kind of go back into a time where you are now, what would you say to the Brittany that's drinking and going to jail and all of that stuff?
Enjoy it because it's ending soon.
Awesome.
Enjoy it. I mean, I wouldn't do anything different. I really wouldn't do anything different. I needed to hit those lows. I needed to do the things that I did in order to get to where I am today. So I don't know that I would do anything different. I would just say have fun.
I like that.
But it's ending.
Enjoy those days.
Yeah.
And from comedy, so we skimmed over it. You were doing comedy and then it sounds like, you stopped advertising and you're going in 100%. How are you able to balance advertising and full-time job plus doing comedy in between?
Well, I wasn't able to do that very well, which is why I didn't do that for too long. I'm very my brain is either on or off. Like last year, for example, I dipped my little pinky toe back into advertising just to make some money quick. I went to go work at Snapchat and it was my brain thinks about one thing and one thing only. So if I'm thinking about recruitment, when I'm going to bed at night, I'm thinking oh, I could hit up this person for this job. I could do this for this job, blah, blah, blah. But so it has to completely be turned off. I cannot be doing both at the same time because then when I'm not doing advertising, then at night when I'm about to go to sleep, I'm thinking of jokes. I'm thinking of scenes I can put in my movie. I'm thinking of creative things. But I do not have people are why don't you just do both? I do not have the luxury of having a brain that can handle both. So
I'm the same.
Yeah, it sucks because like I said, I could easily make a bunch of money and then also time wise, it would work. I could do both. Brain wise, I can do one or the other. So there really wasn't a ton of overlap with full-time comedy and recruitment or advertising. It was I had to shut it off in order to kind of really go into comedy full-time.
And I'm surprised I didn't ask this earlier. What actually brought you into comedy? Because you're going through a lot at that stage in comedy.
So it was at DUI. So I was working at that ad agency and there was a guy that sat across from me. His name's Tamer Katan. He's still a comic. He lives overseas now. And he was a comic and he's like, "You're really funny." And I was going through this DUI. I was really depressed. And he's like, "You're really funny. You should do comedy. It's cheaper than therapy." And I was like, okay. But I wasn't going to do it. And then he ended up quitting to go perform for the troops overseas. So he quit advertising and he would call me every week. And he's like, "Did you call Jerry Katzman?" It's this comedy teacher. He's like, "Did you call him yet?" And I'm like, No. He's like, "You have to call him. You have to do this." And then finally I just got so sick of him calling me. I called Jerry and I was like, "All right, what's the deal? What's this about?" And then, maybe a week or two later, I started doing a writing class, and then I did comedy, and I never really looked back. The first time I got on stage, I was like, oh, this is what I was born to do.
Oh, wow. And how did you go? Because first time in our heads,
It
probably
was
quite good.
It was great. It was great because the way that class is set up is they make it a good experience regardless of your talent level. Like
Nice.
it's a 3-month writing class, so it's rigorous. You work your ass off. You get a 5-minute set together, and then you invite friends and family and the people that are closest to you who want to be supportive. And there's 10 people in this class, so there's 100 people in the audience that are like, it's your first, making you feel like a rock star. And then you go up, and I had a really good set. It's so funny though, because I thought for those first couple of years I was so good, because you do that once and you're like, I'm
Killing it.
and I'm killing it. And I got incredibly lucky where, like, just a string of luck where I was getting booked on shows with like Damon Wayans and Theo Vaughn and Bobby Lee and all these people.
Whoa.
Like right away, where I was like, I'm amazing. And I was also a drunk, so I didn't have like the wherewithal to know when I had a bad set. I was just fucking going balls to the walls. I didn't realize how lucky I was for those opportunities. I was not able to properly capitalize on them because I was drinking too much. I just really wasn't present for the first couple of years. And then, I took a little bit of time off when I met my husband, and then I got back into it sober and married, and it was a much different experience and a much better experience because I was able to be present kind of for the process.
Why do you take time off?
Well, I met my husband, and we were just like, I was really happy, and I just didn't want to write a new set. All of my old jokes were about being like drunk and single, and I didn't want to write new jokes because I was like, I'm happy, nothing is funny. And then life went on and things happened, and I was like, it's time for me to get back on stage. And I didn't like fully quit, but I was doing like one show a month, which to anyone who's a real comic knows that's taking time off.
You're still doing it, so that's great.
Right.
And in terms of, so you've now released your new comedy album. I've seen lots of it. It's hilarious, and we'll upload in the episode notes below so people can check it out. What's been the relationship with fear there? It's very hard to first of all have that material, try it out, then put it all together and create this masterpiece. Tell me, like, what's been going on in your mind?
Yeah, it's terrifying because those are my babies, and now they're out in the world, and I have to just kind of release my attachment to how people take them, what people think about them. And then also, writing it's writing a new set. Like, I have been doing those jokes for so long, and I'm so comfortable doing those jokes. And then this last weekend I went to Salt Lake City with Chris Redd, and he's great. I love him. He is the first person to ever bring me on the road. So he and I are longtime friends, and he was actually at my special taping over a year ago.
Nice.
And so he saw me tape it all. And then HBO was there because he's filming his special with HBO. And so HBO was there, and I knew that. So I was like, oh, I'm going to just do these old jokes. And I bombed. And he was like,
you weren't feeling it, right?
Jokes. What?
You weren't feeling it, right? It wasn't.
It's just the jokes are done. They're done. I'm done with them. I've grown. I've moved on. They're not exciting. You can tell I'm just stale when I'm telling them. So they're over. And Chris just said to me, he's like, I love you. He's like, I saw you film those jokes a year ago. They were never going to be better than they were a year ago. They're done. He's like, have a new set tomorrow. And I was like, okay. And so I did. I went back to the hotel room and I wrote a new set, and it, was 20 minutes and probably 12 of it worked, which is amazing. And the other stuff I had fun doing. So it's like just having fun again is so important. And like the audience can tell if you're having fun or not. Like that's the thing. Like you can't underestimate how intelligent emotionally and like how connected an audience is to your energy, where like they can tell if you fucking hate it. They can tell if you're having fun. They can tell if it's going to work. They don't like that. You know what I mean? They can tell.
They can sense.
So it's like, it was just nice to be like looking the audience in the eyes again and being like, is that funny or not? Because like when I go in being like, I know this shit's funny, fuck you guys. And they're like, well, fuck you too.
Australians have, and it scares a lot of the Americans, I tell, because we have our big Melbourne International Comedy Festival, which is, I think, one of the bigger festivals in the world. Every year, new material. Has to be new material. Can't be.
Oh, really?
Whereas the American model, what it seems like is that you want to like perfect the joke so you can go like on a late night talk show and say the same joke. but not in Australia. You have to have new material. And
Well, that's good.
Yeah, it is. So
I
it's
mean,
like,
that makes you grow. You know, it's easy to get comfortable. And if nobody forces you to change or grow, then, you know, I was doing those jokes a year after I shot them for a special. I was being fucking lazy.
and now because it's scary, like, especially as you become more established.
Right.
And you can say a joke, you know, that's going to get laughs, or you can try
Mhm.
something new on stage, and there's like a battle of confidence and ego and probably 1,000 other things.
Mhm.
How do you go with that?
I mean, just after this last weekend of doing new stuff and having it be so much more fun than anything I've done in the last like 6 months when I've been repeating jokes that I know work. It's just like, at this point, it's about me having fun and like making new art. You know, that's what we're doing. Our hands are going to get dirty. Shit's not always going to work. Sometimes it's going to work. Sometimes it's not. You have to figure out if it's how you said it or what you said or what you're wearing or what you know what I mean? Like, there's so many different variables. Like, yeah, my ego would love for me to always have an amazing set, but my play, like the artist in me, the one that wants to play, knows that like I've got some rough sets ahead of me.
Oh,
That's okay.
That is awesome. You're smiling the whole time saying that. And,
Yeah.
you know, I've done a dot of comedy over the years, and mainly improv. And that's not even like with crowds. And if a joke doesn't go well, that can still be pretty tough. Can you pick yourself up a lot better now?
Yeah, I just don't care anymore. I used to be so sensitive. I used to live and die by each set. My ego could be shattered or inflated to an unhealthy amount in one night. And now I'm just like, now that I've gotten more reps in, I'm like, this is just my job. You know, you can't, having a good day at work or having a bad day at work can't ruin your life or make your life.
Yeah.
So it's just work. I'm just going to work. And, you know, luckily sometimes that work brings people joy. Unluckily, sometimes that work ruins people's nights. Like, you know.
You have a really awesome, I've brought this up a few times in the podcast, and because it's such a good example, a lot of the actors when they're first starting out, and it's the same with the comedians and other people in the creative fields, I am a stand-up comedian, or I am a writer, I am an actor, and they do that's the only thing they do, and that's their life. And then if you're not like doing well in that field, or you're not doing well as a stand-up, that sense of identity and the ego can take a massive hit. And so the advice that we've received either directly or indirectly is you have to have a hobby, you have to do other things. And you've talked about how you are the priority, and looking after yourself is the most important thing, and the rest is kind of a bonus. And I think that's a much healthier way to live.
Yeah, all the other stuff is nice to have, as long as I have, you know, I think especially because I grew up with a mom who was mentally ill and I saw how painful that was. As long as I have my mental health and I feel spiritually aligned and I feel like I'm not fucking ruining someone else's life by just being here, I think that's like everything else, like the comedy and the writing and the movies and the acting and everything else that I want to do is just, it's just for fun. I mean, it's not a, you know, that's a real job. Like, yes, it's a real job, but like, come on, that's the most fun you could ever have while getting paid.
Play and fun is the name of the game. That's why I left accounting. I'm doing screenwriting and this, and it's just, you cannot compare. And there are people that like accounting, and I'm sorry if it appears that I bag accountants. If you like it, do it. If you don't, don't do it.
Yeah.
Play and the fun is just, oh, you feel so good. It's just like something takes over you. Like, if I'm writing a script and I make myself laugh, and I know that might sound a bit narcissistic, but you mentioned you're writing a movie. How good is that feeling? That is, you just know.
It's the best feeling. Or there's nothing better too when you're focusing on a creative pursuit and like the universe just starts downloading files in your head. Like, you'll be, you know, getting a coffee and you're like, oh, this is a scene in the movie. Or you're going to sleep and you're like, oh, this is a joke. And like, I just have all these notes in my phone of like, this is a scene, this is a joke, this is a thing, like just everything, where I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. It's so fun. It's just so fun to create. Yeah.
I've written quite a few scripts, but I think off the top of my head, I think I've written 5 scripts from meditation. And it's like, whoa, this is the best thing in the world. And it sounds like you're doing that in your way as well. But you're just like, I don't know what this is. This is so cool. I don't know I had this in me. And that's probably a whole topic for another time, but it sounds like you get those like downloads in just living your life as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really cool. So what's your movie about?
So my movie is called Sorry for the Mess, and it is about my character is basically the black sheep of a Catholic family who's in charge and put in charge of her mom's suicide funeral. And I don't know if you know much about the Catholic faith, but suicide's a mortal sin. So priests oftentimes won't do funerals. So my character hires like a fake priest. And while the family is kind of navigating their way through my mom's will, which is just, a really elaborate way to kind of tell everyone to go fuck themselves one last time, I'm trying to hide that this guy's not real. And then, everything kind of blows up in everyone's faces, and some gnarly dark shit comes out about the family and what happened to my mom when she was young and why she was the way she was, and everything sort of explodes. It's a family drama. It's funny, but it's not a comedy. There's suicide and there's sexual abuse and there's all sorts of stuff that's dark as fuck. But there's a lot of levity in it.
Oh, that sounds like we'll have many amazing lessons in that. What's the process now? Get it done and then see what happens.
It's done. So it's moving. I have
Nice.
Mark Boone Jr., who was on Sons of Anarchy and is a good friend of mine. He's attached as my uncle in the film. And
wow,
then
is moving. Nice. Good on you.
Yeah. And then we have it out to a handful of people that I can't say until they're formally attached. But there's a lot of actors that could be really exciting, to where if like 2 more attach themselves, it's going to be go time, because we're going to be able to just go to production houses and hopefully get a director attached and just get it made, because it deserves to be made. It's
that's
awesome.
Okay. I'm so proud of you. I'm nearing
Thank
that.
you.
So I'm going to ask you for advice off air. So that is
Yeah,
fantastic.
absolutely.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What we're going to do to wrap up the podcast is do a rapid fire segment. So
Okay.
the first thing that springs to mind, but you can take your time to think about it.
Okay.
Oh, actually, this could be a funny one. I know that one of the steps is apologizing to people in the AA program.
Yeah.
Were there was there a funniest one or one that springs to mind that makes you laugh?
God, most of them are just so powerful and like such good experiences. They're not fun. Oh, there was one. There was a guy that and it's kind of a gray area. You're not supposed to really make amends to people that you like had relationships with, like sexual relationships with. But there's this one guy who was an absolute tyrant.
How come?
Well, just because it can be like, if you want the response because you want their attention, or you want to re-engage in the relationship, or you have to be very clear about what your intentions are, and you have to just really make sure you want to make the amends so that your side of the street is clean, not because you need their attention or you want to re-engage in any of this manipulation or whatever. So, but one of them was this guy who I was a nightmare to in college. And I texted him the amends because I never was going to see him again. And texting is also sort of frowned upon. You're supposed to like call or meet up, but I just texted him. And then I was like, I know, whatever. And then he took like 3 days to respond. And he's like, yeah, you were fucking nuts. I was like, sick, see you later. I was like, bye.
Well, he obviously he thought it for 3 days. That was his response.
Right. Yeah.
Brilliant. And the profound ones, any one that springs to mind that made you feel awesome or had a real positive impact on both of you?
Yeah, so my mentor and I had a falling out actually over my DUI, because I needed help financially, and I ended up hitting them up for it, and they're like, sure, but this is it. Like, just don't contact me again, whatever. And I was like, okay, bye. So I made an amends to them, and then we had like a really nice, beautiful sort of few interactions where they like read one of my screenplays and were like, had a bunch of kind stuff to say, and they're like,
Nice.
you have to go after comedy, like I'm expecting you to win an Emmy, like all this stuff. And then they passed away really suddenly. So that I'm so fortunate that I was able to make that amends before they died. And I kind of have like those emails to go back to and look at, like whenever I'm feeling sad or down or directionless or whatever. They gave me just like a ton of wisdom in a short amount of time, and I just think that was really beautiful.
It's a nice lesson to everyone that if you've got something to say to someone, just say it now.
Yeah.
Easier said than done, but and what's the worst? You get a message like, yeah, you're fucking nuts, and you laugh
Yeah,
about
you're
it a little
fucking
bit.
nuts. Yeah.
And you can laugh about it later.
Right.
Next big dream or goal?
Get this movie made.
Very cool. And you have to keep me updated.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest pet peeve?
A really annoying laugh.
Do you know who Jimmy Carr is? The
Yes.
stand-up comedian? What do you think about his laugh?
It's not bad. It's hard to explain. If I'm doing comedy, if I'm, doing my job, I don't have it. It's like if I'm at a brunch and someone has like a piercing laugh, I'll leave. Like I'll get up and it doesn't even have to be at my table. It can be at a different table. I'll just leave the establishment. I can't.
So what happens if someone's got an annoying laugh laughing at you? Kick him out?
I deal with it because that's my job. But if it's an annoying laugh out in the wild, I remove myself from the situation.
There's a bit there. I hope you work on special ingredient to work all these years and thrive.
I mean, just do it. Like, just sit down and do it. I avoided working. I avoided creating. I avoided everything that I was supposed to be doing for so long. It's like, just put time on your calendar and it's non-negotiable. Just sit down and go to work.
Very cool. I won't comment on them because I'll derail them.
Yeah.
I know you're married, but if you're on Tinder, what would your bio say about you?
I'm here for a good time, not a long time. Just Drake.
I think
I'm just here looking for Drake.
Yeah. Is there a comedian that you look up to and why?
Yeah. Who do I look up to? Well, this is going to be an interesting one because we're pretty much the same age, but Shane Gillis is a friend of mine and I've watched him work his new hour a few times over the last year, and the amount of fun he has with his set and his work. When he's on stage, he's having so much fun. He says stuff that he flies really close to the sun. He really doesn't give a fuck. He's very brave. He's very smart. He's having fun. And then whenever he gets off stage, he's always like, could have been better. Even if he's selling out, he's bringing down the house, he's murdering, and comics are laughing at him. Like, we're laughing in comics. I'm sure you know this. We don't laugh at a lot of stuff because we're like, we know where this joke is going. We're all losing our shit. And he's like, they were whatever. And I'm like, just everything about him. I'm just like, he's egoless, and well, he's not egoless. He knows he's good, but he comes off stage every time and is like, yeah, could have been better.
Oh, wow. And is there a leader that you look up to outside the comedy world? Are you a spiritual leader or just someone that makes you happy or has nice
Gwyneth
lessons?
Paltrow. No, I'm just kidding. Someone that I look up to outside of the comedy, probably my dad.
Ooh.
He's not a spiritual leader, but he's a hard worker and he's funny and he's kind and he's good and he's just salt of the earth and everyone loves him. And I've always looked up to him.
Oh, awesome. I'm glad that you have that. If you could have any superhero power, what would it be and why?
I mean, my mind immediately goes to such a dark place. I'm like, the ability to put myself in a coma for years because I need a nap. I need a nap, and I want a reason for people to stop asking me what I'm working on.
Fair enough. That'd be the more interesting superhero power, but never heard that one before. So, what would you do if you knew you could not fail?
What I'm doing right now.
Ooh, amazing.
Yeah.
Last favorite thing about yourself?
I want to say my sense of humor, but that's kind of a cop-out. I would probably say it's my ability to get up after I fall.
Epic, no commenting. What brings the best creative content out of you?
Tragedy.
And are you able to release it?
The tragedy?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, comedy is tragedy plus time, so you just got to wait it out.
And I've seen your stuff that you laugh. I'd love it when someone can like laugh at their life because it shows the healing's either been done or is being worked on. I think that's a great trait. Any advice you want to give people who want to try something different on you, but perhaps a bit fearful of doing so?
Yeah, I mean, it's just do it. It's like Nike. It's like just do it. Life is way too short to sit around thinking you want to do something. Just try it. And what's the worst that can happen? I mean, I work with a life coach, and she is just like, every time I'm afraid of something, she's like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, that happens, and then what? And then what? And then what? And then you die? Okay, and then you're dead. You know what I mean? So it's just like, what's the worst that can happen? You can get rejected. It can be scary. It can be hard. It's going to be all those things, but it's scarier and it's harder to think you want to do something and then spend your whole life thinking about it and not do it.
There's a book that I had the author on this podcast, and I bring this up way too much, but she's amazing. She, international best-selling author. She'd written a book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, and she interviewed probably over 1,000 people. She was a palliative care nurse. So she interviewed over 1,000 people who knew that they were dying. And she asked them what their number one regret was. And it was pretty much, I wish I'd lived the life that I thought, no, I wish I lived the life that I wanted to live and not the life I thought others wanted me to live.
Right. Well, that's the thing. And it's like, these others that want you to live this way, are they really happy? Do they really know? You know, like, that's like one of the things that I noticed recently. I'm like, I stopped taking advice from people whose lives I don't want.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not going to take advice from my friend who can't pay her bills. Like,
I think it's like a lot of my friends, they're in like the accounting, the finance space. And I don't say this to be mean to whoever. And they just see like this one person, typically a guy, and they might be a multi-millionaire, but their relationships appear not to be great. They work like 100 hours a week. They're not necessarily in the best frame of mind, both physically and mentally. And they're like, yeah, but they're killing it in the business world. I'm like, that is just such a tiny aspect of the world. And they're like, oh, but I'm like, there's more to success. Is not just the money and maybe climbing the corporate ladder. I mean, that could, if that's what you want, that's great. But there's like another 1,000 things. It's just not helpful to, you can pick aspects of what you like from people, but to say you want to be that person, it's not, in my experience, very helpful.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing we talked about earlier. No amount of money buys you happiness. It's like, you have to do things that make you happy and fill you up rather than just suck you dry.
Agreed. And this is the last question before I ask how people can follow you, keep up to date with you, and binge watch your special like 100 times. What is the one question I should have asked you?
Oh man, that's the trickiest question. What's the one question you should have asked me? How'd you get that ass, girl? No, I'm just kidding.
Can you imagine I asked that and you didn't ask that? I'd never do this podcast again.
Yeah. Like, first of all, squats. Second of all, protein.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I feel like you did a great job. I don't have any questions for myself.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Before we go, how can people follow you, watch your special, and hopefully keep up to date with you when you sell the movie?
Yeah, so my special is on YouTube, Brittany Schmitt. It's called From Hoe to Housewife, and my name is spelled, my Instagram handle is just Brittany Schmitt, BrittanySchmitt, no D. I took all those in college. People always think there's a D in my last name, but there's not. It's Schmidt with 2 T's. So that's where I'm at. I'm on Twitter, but I'm not active, so don't even worry about that.
Awesome. So, and wait, where did you say they can find the special?
It's on YouTube. If you just look up Brittany Schmitt From Hoe to Housewife, it'll come up. It's under, it's on 800 Pound Gorilla's YouTube. But
okay, I'll upload that as well, so people can check it out in the episode notes below. Thank you. You're amazing. You're self-aware. You're hilarious. You've got great compassion, empathy, and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was nice to meet you.
I love Brittany's take on how money doesn't buy happiness. She mentions how she could have all the money and fame in the world, but she'd rather be mentally sound and happy. To go through the adventure of life that Brittany has and how she talks about her improvement and the happiness she's gone through was simply inspiring. It takes a real brave human to look at their issues and decide to move forward. Brittany encourages us to work regularly on our mental and spiritual health. She outlines activities that can bring back ownership of ourselves, such as meditating, journaling, exercise, therapy, coaching, and even dancing. These are simple and easy to do, and all help in their own way. And further, she acknowledges how gratitude has played a key role in living a great life. Her quote, "No matter where you are, you have stuff to be grateful for. It doesn't matter how bleak or how much pain you're in or what your external circumstances are, there are always things to be grateful for. I think reminding yourself of that, even on the hardest days, is one of the most important things to being happy."
Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.